Hello there, everyone, and welcome back to the Showing Up to Your Life podcast and YouTube channel. My name is Art Burns, and yes, I'm very excited to be here with you today. Pardon my voice here, it's a little scratchy. Feeling a little under the weather this weekend, but, I'm going to do my video today because, you know why? Because of you. That's why. I just got another email this morning from someone who told me that they just enjoy the videos and the emails so much. It's just so inspiring to me when I hear people, who are really enjoying this and benefiting from the videos that I do here every day. So please, if you're ever kind of considering, oh, maybe I should say something, maybe I should reach out, please do. Please do. And that includes for any questions, right? If you have any questions whatsoever about any of this work, any of the videos that I talk about, any of any of the videos I do, or any of the practices I talk about, or any concepts or ideas, or maybe it inspires something that you would like to share too. If any of these are true, please go ahead and reach out. I love to hear from people. It really just, it just, it makes it so special for me, and really, that's this is what gets me out of bed. This is truly my why, as they say. And so before I go any further, one of the things that this person reaching out earlier was talking about is one of the couple of different programs that I'm getting ready to launch. Okay, in my coaching program, I've got 2 new programs coming up. Now, I always do one-on-one coaching. That's sort of the always available. Doesn't have to sync up with any kind of time. You can call me tomorrow. We can start tomorrow. And that's always there for you. But in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be launching a couple of different, more targeted programs. And so the first one is going to be a 6-week course in what we're calling the Introduction to Mindfulness. Okay, so I'm going to, over the course of 6 weeks, I'm going to go through a very basic explanation of the basic practices. We're going to go through a formal, self-guided meditation practice, a couple of informal practices, a semi-formal practice in the form of pausing, and then we're going to do some compassion practices, both self-compassion and compassion for others. And these are going to lay the foundation for you then to explore your mindfulness, from that place. And so it's going to be a perfect foundation. It's going to give you everything you need to get started, and that program starts on the 5th, which is next Monday. The other program, which starts the following week, is more of a targeted course. It's for people who are kind of like me, like I used to be, struggling with anger issues and resentment issues for other people in your life, and kind of struggling with finding your happiness, right? That gets lost in the shuffle of all this stress and the anger and all this stuff. So that's a longer course that we're going to be doing. It's going to be a little bit more intensive, a little bit more for, targeted for people who really, have that thing that they're struggling with, right? That feeling of struggling with a lot of anger issues, resentment issues, having a hard time forgiving people, these kind of things. And ultimately, it's going to be about creating happiness, right? And so the name of that course is How to Be Happy for No Reason. And that's really, I'm super excited for this one. And again, it's more of a targeted thing, not necessarily more advanced in terms of mindfulness. We're not actually going to we're going to do some mindfulness, but more it's going to be heartfulness and more compassion practices, but as well as a lot of mindfulness too. But it's not so much of like, okay, here I'm going to teach you how to be mindful. No, we're going to really target this concept of transforming anger into happiness. So if you're interested in either of those, the best thing you can do is to jump on a call, okay, so that I can make sure that you're getting into the right course, right? Because I don't want everything to get started and everybody's in these courses and somebody says, oh no, I was thinking that other one, can I get, it's going to get very confusing. So if you're considering any of these courses, or just generally want to talk to me about, whatever courses I offer, this is the way to do it. I'm going to leave the link in the description for my Calendly link, right? So the Calendly is the automatic calendar that I use, which the link below, if you click on it, it will drop you into my online calendar. You'll be able to see when I'm available, when I'm not available, and you can pick a day and a time that works for you. Just click on it, enter your name, your email address, And that's it. Then I will call you on that given time, on that given day, and we'll have a chat and we'll just clear everything up for you, okay? So please, if you're at all interested in any of this, I strongly encourage you to use that link and schedule a call with me, okay? It's the call, we book out 45 minutes. It doesn't have to take a full 45 minutes if it doesn't need to. Like if if the questions we can answer are done in 15 minutes, well, then it only needs to be 15 minutes. Again, there's no cost involved at all, and and I would just love to talk to you. So yeah, so even if it's something you're kind of considering, I encourage you to check it out. All right. Okay, so today I wanted to talk about, and again, I'm a little under the weather, so I apologize. My energy might not be quite what you're used to, so please pardon me for that. But what I wanted to talk to you today about is just general awareness. So many times in these videos and stuff, we kind of, we talk. At least I do most of the talking here. I get it. But what I do is I talk about how we can apply these concepts and these practices to help us in our lives, right? In the sense of, and this goes back to a lot of what we've talked about. When the Dalai Lama, decided to come to the U.S. and work with American neuroscientists and psychologists. His reasoning for doing so was that he felt like all we did in America was to study pathology, right? Like what's wrong with the mind. And so using all of these these techniques to kind of examine the really healthy mind and the happy mind, like that kind of concept. And so that kind of applies to what I'm saying here, is that a lot of times when I talk about the benefits of emotional intelligence, for instance, right? I talk about how it can help you in your personal relationships. It can help you in your business. It can help you in your parental, experience. It can help you deal with the rest of your family members, right? As though, and we're kind of talking about that as though there's something currently not going well with all that stuff. So this is a way that we can improve those things, right? And that's true, right? I mean, that's definitely a thing, right? That we have things in our lives that aren't going the way that we want them to. So we come to things like this practice and this YouTube channel and podcast to find out what we can do to help ourselves to maybe heal some of the things that are wounded and maybe fix some of the things that are broken and repair some of the things that aren't working properly, right? But then there's also the whole side of things that, that just how just a deepening of the awareness in our lives, can open us up to the fullness of life in a way that has nothing to do with something being broken or fixed or wrong or right or anything like that, right? It really just has to do with kind of, almost like an Instagram filter, right? Like, I don't even know how to use these Instagram filters, but I know what they are. But like, if you go into Instagram and you take one of your photos and you put it in Instagram, you can do this on your phone too. I think your phone has all the same kind of filters and stuff. But basically, these filters that allow you to kind of take the same picture, but change the sort of saturation of it, right? And change the richness of it, and change the dramatic level of it, the the powerful feeling of it, right? And so that's what I'm talking about here, right? Like through the deepening of your awareness, right? Life becomes like you're living through one of those really beautiful, amazing filters that you're looking at your life. Colors seem richer, sounds seem more articulate. Tastes. When you experience food, you experience people, you experience, your loved ones, your intimate partners. When you experience all these things, you experience them on a different level that is purely because of the deepening awareness that you can cultivate through these practices, right? So whether something is wrong or not, right, it's still, you get so much benefit out of these practices because, again, it just adds this richness of life, right? And so I wanted to share a personal story around this that happened to me a number of years ago, like pretty soon after I first started doing my own practices, right? Which so we're going back around, say, 6, 7 years now ago, maybe 8 years ago. It's hard for me to remember these. When you have kids and you work for yourself, it's like calendar time and clock time all take on these really weird perspectives. So I'm not gonna, let's say between 7 and 10 years ago, okay, somewhere around there. We used to live, my family and I used to live in the Hudson Valley of New York, right, which is a little area in the Hudson River Valley, which is where we lived specifically. Was about an hour and a half outside New York City, right? So not really country, but certainly not city either, and not really suburb either. It's kind of like this sort of mid-range kind of, it was kind of rural. Some people did commute. I commuted for a little while, for like 2-3 years when we first moved there. But most people, it's not necessarily a commuting kind of thing. Most people who commute live a little closer to the city. So kind of this weird sort of country city kind of suburby kind of mix thing. And so anyway, we had this beautiful little house that looked out onto this creek in the backyard, right? It was really, really pretty. We loved it. We were very happy there. And so So as I started to do the work of mindfulness, right, and compassion practices, and really cultivating this as a skill of my own, right, and that's what this is, and that goes no matter whether we want to talk about something being wrong that we need to fix, or something being broken that needs to be repaired, right, like all of these things, whether we're talking about that or just a deepening of our experience in the awareness, right. That no matter what, either way, this work is always about building a skill, right? It always is. It's always about, and awareness itself is a skill, right? The ability to be more aware and to pay attention to what is happening around you or inside of you, that is a skill. Right. And so in any circumstance, whatever we're talking about with this practice, with this work, it's always got some level of a skill cultivation, right, or development. All right. So so that said, when I started sort of cultivating this skill and developing the skill and started feeling the skill come to me, right, I was hitting my stride, as it were, right. I would start spending more time, not only spending time sort of alone, right, but well, let me say this. It wasn't, I found myself spending more time alone, right? But not because I needed to be alone, right? Not because it was like I wanted to be away from others, but because being alone gave me an opportunity to, again, number one, practice this attention and this awareness, but also to experience the awareness, right? And to really, dwell in it and immerse myself into it, right? And the more I did that, the more I realized how good it felt and how rich and powerful these experiences could be, right? In terms of what, what's all going on around us. It's not, a lot of times somebody says to you, hey, what's going on? The answer is nothing. But it could not be further from the truth, right? There's always so much that's happening, and so along these lines, back then around 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago, whenever it was, I was hanging out on the back porch, on the back deck of our house, right, where we had this nice little yard, it had trees all sort of around the edges, and then it's sort of open, but it was on a big hill that went into the creek there. It was quite beautiful, and I'm talking now, it's like, why did we move? but that's a story for another day. But I was hanging out there, and I was, again, a lot of times if I was going to go and hang out on a deck, right, before I learned about mindfulness practices, I would say, okay, I'm going to go out on the deck because I want to ... right, or I'm going to go outside to ... right. The feeling was always that there had to be a purpose there, right? And that's one of the things that changes with mindfulness. When you start cultivating mindfulness and start practicing mindfulness, you kind of just want to be. You just want to be. You just want to just allow yourself to just be present with whatever is happening, right? And again, part of it is, like when you learn how to drive, right? Like you're the first one. Oh, you need something from the store? I'll go. Somebody needs to be picked up and dropped off. I'll do it because I want to drive, because I want to enjoy this thing that I just learned how to do, right? So the same thing was happening to me with my mindfulness practice, and I think the same thing happens to most people when they go through this kind of cultivation of this skill and this sort of new way of seeing the world, right? And so I found myself doing that. I found myself, kind of, desiring to be alone in a quiet kind of way, and just, and the other thing that comes from this is that, and this is something I remember from back then, not to digress too much from my story, but back then I remember very clearly getting this idea that not only was it about this like spontaneous like happiness and this sort of just sort of contentment that I had all the time, right? But it was also, and this was big for me, I all of a sudden was never ever bored, ever, right? And to this day, like I cannot even imagine being bored right now. Like it's a foreign concept to me. And this is somebody who spent his whole life, like I could not be anywhere without a book certainly once electronic devices came, but before electronic devices came, right? I had crossword puzzle books. Like I would buy a whole book full of crossword puzzles just so that if I ever found myself in some place, I wouldn't be bored. In fact, being bored was the reason I learned how to play guitar, because I was worried. I felt that if I learned how to play guitar, as I was watching other people play guitar, I was like, wait a minute, anytime that person's bored, he or she can just pick up the guitar. And so like that was one of my motivations for learning how to play music, was so that I could stave off boredom, right? And so that's how deep boredom used to be for me. And now for the last 10 years, like I can't even imagine feeling boredom. Right. And so that's one of those things that happens when you start doing this work and you start, cultivating these skills, is that you feel like I can just sit here and do absolutely nothing and never, ever get bored of it. Right? Like boredom doesn't even come into the equation, right? And so I found myself doing that quite often. And you might find yourself doing that too. You might find yourself doing it now, and you might be scratching your head like, why do I want this? Why do I want to be alone? And it's mostly because of this. And it might also be because you're, in this work, we tend to unearth a lot of things, right? And so there might be things that are coming up for you that you're trying to kind of, figure out. And it's easier to do that when you don't have people talking to you, right? So for whatever reason, you might find yourself, as I did back then, desiring to be alone and just really wanting that solitude and that quiet, right? And so in one of those times that I was doing that, and this is something that really just I still kind of can't believe that this even happened. But what happened was, and this is because I grew up in New York City, right? So in New York City, you really are disconnected from nature. Like I had no concept of nature. I mean, wildlife to me was pigeons and squirrels. That was it, or rats and cockroaches. There were, nature, was Central Park, right? It was like surrounded by concrete, literally locked by concrete, and had veins of concrete all through it, right? And so there was no real, like, I never had that connection to nature, which makes this story even more puzzling and just kind of awesome, right? So I'm standing there on the back deck one day, and I'm hearing, like, I was listening, I was just, and again, this is something that you can't, I can't describe this to you without you experiencing it, right? So, but once you start, practicing like this and you start developing these skills, what happens is you're no longer just hearing things, you're listening for things, right? And it's a difference. And again, I can't really describe that difference to you. I want you, if you know what I mean, I want you to write me back, and I want to talk about this. I want to kind of come up with ways that I can explain this, right? And I'm sure you're struggling with that too, because it's so hard to articulate. But yeah, there I was standing on the back deck on this sunny, spring day, and I was just listening. I was just out there listening to what happened. And what I heard was I heard, I heard cars and trucks passing on the roads nearby. I heard the construction that was going on across the creek over there. I heard a plane or some kind of helicopter or something going on. All those things were happening there. And I could hear birds, and I just, again, to me, coming from New York City, birds are just birds. You hear the sounds of birds. It's like, okay, that's the bird sound. How many birds it was, what kind of birds, anybody's guess, right? Least of all me. Like I'm the last person to ask, what birds they would be, right? So I'm hearing the birds, but then I'm listening, and again, not just hearing, but I'm listening to the birds. And as I'm listening, and as I'm dwelling in this awareness of what I'm hearing, I notice that I hear a couple of really odd sounding birds, like birds that wait a second, something's different about this. And I could swear I hear very high pitched sound. I'm like, that's a baby bird somewhere out here in this backyard. Like, I don't know where it is. I can't tell, but I can tell that there's a baby bird back there somewhere. And so now I start to watch. And again, it's just deepening my awareness. I didn't go climbing trees to find out where's the baby bird. Let me go out and listen to see if I can follow the sound or something like that. It wasn't like that at all. I was just open to it. I was just allowing myself to experience what was happening in the present moment, in this gorgeous little spring day on this, back porch, right? And then something really kind of, occurred to me, is that I could see that there was a cardinal who was, and we had lots of cardinals. Again, I knew what a cardinal was just because I learned over the years, but I never knew one when I was a kid. It wasn't my thing, New York City kind of thing, but I could see that there was something different about this cardinal that was flying around in my backyard. Again, I'd seen many cardinals there before, but there was something about the way this one was acting that was really peculiar. And I noticed that this cardinal was flying from like one tree to another, and then it would always go back to this one tree, right? So it would fly to that tree, and then it would fly up and go to this other tree, and then shoot right over to that tree, then shoot back to the first tree, and then it would come back to this one. And then it would come back and do this stuff over, and then come back to this one. And then I started listening again. And then I realized, I was like, there's a baby cardinal in that tree right there. And it was the most exciting thing to me to be, to be in this scene like this and to be part of it. Like I was like a participating observer to what was happening, right? And I could hear it, and I could see it, and I could feel it. It wasn't something like, and I never saw the nest. Like the trees were all in bloom and stuff. So it's not like I could say, oh, there it is, let me show my kids. It's just like, I know it has to be in that tree because of the way I see this animal behaving, right? This must be either the mother or the father who is bringing food or just checking or just, keeping an eye on what's going on, but that was what was happening. I didn't look it up. I couldn't tell you anything that was happening here, for sure. But I could tell that this was what it was. Like it was something to that effect, right? And so day after day after day, I would go out into the backyard, out to the back porch, and do the same thing and just listen and watch. And the same thing was playing out every single day until one day something different happened. One day I saw this black bird, this little black bird fly out from that tree. I was there when it happened. I was there to see it happen. This little tiny black bird. Now, of course, cardinals are not black, so I was confused. I said, "Wait a second, what happened here?" And then just then, that little black bird like opened its wings and like, kind of turned so that I saw the bottom, and the entire bottom of this little black bird was this crimson red of a cardinal. It was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. It was like a crow on the outside and a cardinal on the inside. And I went and looked that up, and apparently, yeah, that's how baby cardinals form. They're blackened first because you don't want these bright red thing in a nest so that predators could come and find it, right? So, but once it's able to fly and handle itself, its redness starts to take over. It becomes that majestic red bird that we all know of, right? But in the beginning, it's only red on the inside, and it's keeping it safe and secure. And so anyway, I just wanted to share that story with you because it kind of came to mind the other night as I was just kind of hanging out, and I just thought that would be a nice thing to share, because again, it's, nothing there had anything to do with, solving my, issues from my childhood. It had nothing to do with solving my procrastination. It had nothing to do with understanding empathy or feeling compassion for others and reducing anger or increasing happiness. It had no goals like that. Nothing targeted like that, right? But what it revealed to me was that in that moment, I realized that all this work I'd been doing was cultivating an ability to live life on a different level than I had ever known before, a level that was much more in tune to what was happening. Again, whether that's an improvement or a fix or what, it didn't matter at that moment. And it doesn't matter universally. What matters is that it's there for you, right? It's available to you to live your life with this kind of connection to it, whether that's birds in the backyard or understanding your children on a different level, feeling what your lover or your loved ones need on a different level, understanding what's happening in the world around you, all of it, and all of it indeed is all there for the taking and for your benefit. And all it requires, all it's built on, the whole thing, all of this is built just on doing, 5 minutes, 10 minutes a day, every morning, just sitting still and just allowing yourself to be. All right, folks. Again, Intro to Mindfulness, 6-week program, anger, happiness program, 12-week program, 2 separate programs. Call me up if you want to find out about them, okay? And then, of course, I also, as always, offer one-on-one coaching for some people. That's a much sort of more beneficial or whatever. It fits better, and so that's always available to you too. All right. I wish you well. I thank you for listening, and I'll be back again tomorrow. Take care, everybody. I'll be back. Bye-bye.